Time now for the half-hour news with Todd Harding.
A car bombing in the Turkish capital Ankara has killed at least 28 people and wounded more than 60 others. Cancelling a trip abroad, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan vowed to continue the fight against what he called the pawns that carry out such attacks and the forces behind them. This report from the BBC's Yolan Nell.
Officials say it's clear the attack was well planned. A car filled with explosives was detonated next to two buses being used to transport military personnel as they stopped at traffic lights. The Turkish government says it has no information yet on who was responsible, but some are pointing fingers at the PKK, the banned Kurdistan Workers' Party, which resumed its armed struggle against the government last year. Other recent deadly bombings in Turkey, a suicide attack targeting tourists in Istanbul last month, and October's explosions in Ankara have been blamed on Islamic State fighters.
The US Secretary of State John Kerry has said that Washington expects to have very serious talks with Beijing, following reports that China has installed an advanced missile system on a contested island in the South China Sea. From Washington, here's the BBC's Barbara Plett-Usher.
Mr. Kerry's spokesman said satellite images appeared to confirm reports that China had deployed the anti-aircraft missiles on the disputed island. The Secretary of State said the U.S. expected to have very serious talks with Beijing about this. The news came just as President Obama concluded a summit with South Asian nations in which he sought to push back against Beijing's expanding efforts to claim sovereignty over most of the contested South China Sea. China called the reports about the missiles a lot of hype, but said it had a right under international law to defend its territory.
A convoy of trucks has begun delivering desperately needed aid to 5 besieged areas of Syria. There are reports that 4 out of the 5 villages have already been reached, 2 rebel-held and 2 under government control. The BBC's Johnny Diamond has more.
There are, the UN estimates, 500,000 Syrians living under siege. Some have starved to death. Many are on the edge of existence with little food, fuel or medicine, cut off either by rebels or by the Assad regime. Today, the UN said, was a test. One aid official acknowledged that the 100 or so trucks dispatched to 5 different locations would not solve the problems of those besieged. But it is the beginning of a process that the UN thinks might lead towards a cessation of hostilities.
In Egypt, the last remaining centre for the treatment of torture victims has been ordered to close by the Egyptian authorities. The El Nadim Centre has documented human rights abuses and provided counselling to victims of torture since 1993. It now has until next week to shut down. The authorities said it had breached health ministry regulations. The head of the centre, Aida Saif al-Dawla, told the BBC the move is politically motivated. She said they would defy the order. And that's the news from RTHK.
Good morning and welcome to Backchat. I'm Hugh Chivers and your co-host today is Andrew Work. Andrew, good morning to you.
Good morning, Hugh.
Andrew Work, that is Off the Harbour Times.
That's me.
We're focusing today on 2 proposed responses, possible responses, to the MongKok violence. First, the question of whether there should be an inquiry into the events in MongKok at the Chinese New Year, the way that they were handled and the reasons for the violence. Or would that be, as the government claimed, to give too much legitimacy to a small, unrepresentative group of people, and perhaps even to open a Pandora's box? And what about the idea of a law that prohibits people taking part in a demonstration from wearing masks? Many countries have such laws and don't seem to see them as incompatible with a free, orderly society. Or do you think that perhaps there are enough laws to charge people with if they do cause trouble, and masks are beside the point? Email us with your thoughts, questions and comments. Our address, backchat@rthk.hk. Our Facebook page, Backchat and RTHK Radio 3. You can comment there. Or call us 233-88266, 233-88266. After 9:20, we're talking about disputes and claims of militarisation in the South China Sea. Joining us for our first topic, we have with us Lawrence Ma, barrister, chairman of the China-Australia Legal Exchange Foundation, Albert Chan, who's a legislator with People Power, later Sid Ho, who's a legislator with the Labour Party, will be joining us, and we hope to be joined also by Thomas Chung, chairman of the Commission on Youth with the Business and Professionals Alliance for Hong Kong. Lawrence Ma, we'll start with you. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Hugh, and good morning, Andrew.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us once again. Let's start maybe with this idea of an inquiry. A group of academics and others did start a petition suggesting that there should be an inquiry, some kind of independent inquiry, perhaps with a judge or someone presiding, into the events, the causes and the way that they were handled. What do you think of that idea?
Well, I would start off reading the law first. I mean, there is this Commission of Enquiry Ordinance, Chapter 86, and in order to convene a commission, you have to satisfy three conditions. The first is that the conduct or management of any public body is under scrutiny, or second, the conduct of any public officer under scrutiny, or in the opinion of the chief executive, it is a matter of public importance. So you've got to satisfy either of these for an inquiry to be conducted. And recently, there have been two inquiries that has been so held. First is the Commission of Inquiry into the collusion of vessels near Lemmer Island in 2012. The second one is the Commission of Inquiry into excess lead found in drinking water. That was just very recent. Now, so you've got to ask yourself whether this MongKok riot has satisfied either one of these requirements, which means that does it involve the conduct or management of any public body? Whereas if you compare this with the collusion of vessels, it involves the Marine Department, because the vessels was under the Marine Department's control.
Well, it clearly does. Cause
yeah,
the police.
Yeah. And maybe the FEHD, but they're a pretty minor player in this whole thing.
Yeah, but I mean, if you want to investigate into the operation of the police by way of a public inquiry into whether they should use sufficient force, or whether sufficient force has been used, or whether appropriate response tactic has been used, that could be done by way of an internal inquiry. It's more appropriate to be done by way of an internal operation review.
Why more appropriate?
I would have thought that because those tactics would be better be kept within the police purview, because once released, some of these informations may not be facilitating to law enforcement, I have thought.
What would be the threshold, you think, for crossing it, for it being appropriate for an internal inquiry versus a public inquiry? Like, I mean, things like intelligence, did they have appropriate intelligence gathering? I could see that being maybe an internal inquiry, but when it comes to, the appropriateness of police and the kind of orders people were given, it seems like that might be something that they would need an outside body to take a closer look at.
I would have thought that the marine event was really involves the entire management of vessels, and where also the lead inquiries in the drinking waters involves the housing department, which there is really issues and questions to be answered as to who actually committed or had these things committed, and is not known to the public. But for this MongKok riot issue, I don't think it is so opaque as to why it happened, because it's quite obvious that there's a group of extremists who wished to advance their political ideology, and the police was responding with force. I mean, the situation is not as opaque as in the lead water situation and in the marine vessel collusion situation.
So we don't need to inquiry because we know what the answer is.
Well, very much so. It's whether the police has performed, responded appropriately towards the happening of a riot.
Right. So there's no point in having the inquiry because there's no question that the police acted other than properly.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Albert Chan, good morning to you, legislator with People Power. Thanks for joining us. What do you think about the idea of an inquiry, an independent inquiry?
Well, that depends if the government really believes this is a riot. I mean, there were riots in Hong Kong history, and in all those riots, the government have public inquiry and have detailed reports on those riots. And CY Leung classified the MongKok incident as a riot and refused to set up an inquiry on this issue. that means that, it wasn't a riot.
It is
quite, so it is quite clear, I mean, if it is a confrontation between individual groups and the police, it was quite right to say that, the internal investigation can study the problem. But if it is a riot that affects public order and all, affect public
isn't it a matter of scale? If you look at 1967, that was involved a lot more people over a lot longer period and led to more than 50 deaths. In fact, what we saw was much. It may have been violent enough to be termed a riot, but on its scale was tiny,
like a mini riot or a baby riot.
Well, definitely. I mean, the scale defines, the riot or confrontation. You see this in the regional.
But if it's only the actions of a few hundred people, it's not worth having a commission of inquiry.
Well, then it's not a riot.
So you're saying that if it's a riot, it gets an inquiry by definition.
Definitely.
But if there's no inquiry, then it's not a riot.
Yeah, I mean, you feel it in Hong Kong history when you look at all those incidents, and also when you look at the situation. It is quite clear that the usage of the riot, was a political, motive, rather than the actual situation. So by the prosecuting, those individuals involving in the riot, to me is totally outrageous.
Is the question of the clarity of the definition of a riot going to be an issue if people are charged? Are there different legal measures that are brought to bear for participating in a riot versus participating in something classified a disturbance or a rowdy night out? Do you know what I mean?
Definitely. I mean, the government used the description, use riot to describe the incident. Gave the legal weapons to prosecute those people, with a very serious offense. But administratively and also legally, when they want to when the public want to investigate the situation, they decline the independent inquiry. So the government, win in both, in every situation.
So you're saying
so
no?
They manipulate the all the in all ways to ensure that that they will have a upper hand in all situations.
So Thomas Chung joins us now from the Business and Professionals Alliance for Hong Kong. Good morning to you in our central studio. Good morning. Hello.
Morning.
Hi, thank you indeed for joining us. What about first of all this idea of an inquiry? Do you think that's a good idea?
I think it's well, actually, the government has denied the inquiry, but on the other hand, I think it may be a good idea, to have the general public, to kind of to think about, and to discuss the issue. It is a riot to me. It's totally a violence, and people they set fire. On police car, on public, properties. They throw, bricks and glass bottles, to attack people. It is a riot, okay? But the problem is, I think, the general public, we should get into a discussion, we can discuss, what is the underlying causes, behind. Why people, why the society are so get into such a situation. I think we should have a lot more discussion on that instead of, getting into inquiry.
Thomas, you're the chairman of the Commission on Youth. That's an internal body within the BPA?
Yes.
Have you been looking at these issues?
Yes, we do.
Okay, because you're the BPA. I thought maybe you were just doing like programs for young entrepreneurs and things like that. But are you looking at what? So what have you looked at within the Commission? What do you think is driving this kind of unhappiness?
Well, I think there's a lot of, it's obvious, they don't believe in the government. They want to overthrow the government. But the Hong Kong indigenous, they have their own philosophy and belief behind. So, to me, what they're doing, they're trying to, get international attention, try to undermine the Hong Kong government, the civil administration, And well, actually, it's very bad. You know, he has been giving Hong Kong a very bad international image. I believe, you know, a lot of our you know, businesses and trading activities would have been affected, you know, by the incident.
Okay, Albert Chan?
Yes. You know, and I believe the main reason for the government to set up the independent inquiry is that they don't want the truth to be known to the public. You know, there were lots of probably hidden problems, you know, or the hidden story that especially CY Leung, you know, didn't want the public to know. You know, so that, you know, there were probably a lot of problems in the police operation. You know, there were the serious, as many guest speakers have indicated, you know, the cause of the incident, you know, is the main thing that most people want to know. They said the youth or the people in Hong Kong don't believe the Hong Kong government, or the administration has serious administration fault. You know, so, you know, there are lots of questions, you know, to be raised in independent inquiry, and there will be lots of facts and story to be investigated and to be released.
What do you think is going to come out? What do you think is going to come out in an inquiry that people don't already know? Like, I mean, the amount of video coverage of what actually happened that night is pretty amazing. But well, what do you think's out there?
Well, you know, if there will be an independent inquiry, you know, the report probably will indicate very strongly that the public has strong resentment and dissatisfaction against the you know, CY Leung's government, and also the police you know, violent act or the police brutality, you know, was also a factor, you know, that you know, that stimulates anguish or confrontation between the youth and the police force. You know, so there will be a lot of you know, there will be a lot of description, you know, on the government, especially on the more administration and also improper administration.
Like you don't think that's been pretty widely documented already? I mean, that people are unhappy. You just want to see it in an official report?
Well, widely document or the public discussion, and also the press release, you know, press report is very different from a formal inquiry description and conclusion. And I don't think CY Leung's administration, you know, will accept, you know, that the inquiry will reach those, you know, those decisions and conclusions. So this is why they refuse to set up this independent inquiry.
Mm. Thomas Chung, I think the government argument is that you don't really need to look into the causes of the riot like it's a big social movement, because it's not. It's they typify it as a you know, a small group
independent incident.
An independent incident. And so if you had a big inquiry and you interviewed them and said, what do you want? You know, and they said, oh, we want X, Y, or Z. We want the repeal of the functional constituencies. Does the government then have to feel that they'd have to repeal functional constituencies? They're being held hostage by a tiny group of violent people who are not representative of the society as a whole. Why have an inquiry and leave yourself open to that danger?
I think the government, you know, have their concern for sure. You know, you just mentioned a few of them. They're not more other priority, I guess. The incident, you know, if actually, you know, I think what we should do right now is to try to stop, you know, this kind of riot or violence incident from happening again in the immediate future. I think an independent inquiry into this MongKok riot. But the government, they may be afraid of, you know, needing to open another, you know, to get into another bigger discussion or concern, in which they don't want to get into. To me, I guess public or general, you know, public discussion on this, we should get into a direction that we should really discuss, you know, what's happening, you know, what can be done, you know. What is the causes, you know, underlying causes behind, you know, the whole incident? It's obvious that, you know, some people, you know, in particular, you know, some, you know, those people who are the rioters, you know, they're very unhappy about what's going on here in Hong Kong. But, is there any way that we can solve the problem? I think we should try to do something, to put Hong Kong back into the harmony. But, certain people, with a very, extreme political view, whether they are willing to get into this kind of discussion, is a problem. But I think, what we are trying to do, no matter whether you are supporting CY Leung or not, I think we have to, the society will have to get into discussion to see, where we want to go, how we can move forward.
Yeah, but you have to, you raise a very good question. Why the extremists, and those radical groups turn up at this point in time? Why now?
Well, it's because of election.
Why not 20 years ago? They have nothing to do with the election. You have to answer those questions. But in order to answer those questions, and especially to have the government to respond to those questions, you need the public inquiry. Because up till now, CY Leung refused to accept the fact that that the youth anguish against the government. It's because of his behavior and also because of the government improper administration. So if the government refused to accept the fact that they are the source of the problem, then it's nothing that you can improve. It's nothing you can do to try to create, as you said, a harmony relationship, in a society.
Yeah. Wow.
Thomas, is this something your Commission on Youth has actually looked at?
Yeah, we really, we try to, do something, how to build a more harmonious society. In my belief, I still think that, there are extremists, or radical parties, on either side. But what we need right now is to rebuild Hong Kong. Well, I think, we try to do something more positive, we try to, see, how we can help people, help young, or underprivileged people, how to, give them a better opportunity. What we're trying to do, we want to build a more economically robust, society. And then, we want to create jobs, we want to have a better image for Hong Kong. That's what we're trying to do. And then we try to, give Hong Kong a better, give people a better room for, upgrading their life.
Lawrence Ma, there's been a lot of speculation in society and people talking, laying the blame either on activists or those who incite the activists, or the police, or the hawkers, or triads, or the CIA, or CY Leung, or academics. There's a huge list of people, who other people have said are to blame indirectly or directly, or agents provocateurs, the Communist Party, and so on. Don't you think it's in a situation like that, it would be good to have somebody with some standing, someone like a judge perhaps, to weigh up all those arguments and get to the bottom of this?
Well, I would have thought that if you look at the ideology as advocated by this group, they are a group of extreme localism group, which they would believe Hong Kong to be sort of more separated from China. They would not like the communist rule. They would not like any, for example, tourist mainland. If the Commission of Enquiry finds the answer by inquiring into these people as to why they come and give evidence in a box, cross-examined by counsel, what has been revealed is that, yes, we don't like the mainland government and we don't like the communists. So the answer you get is probably yes, stop tourists from the mainland, stop supply of food and even eggs, for example, because some of them are fake. Which these things, if found, the Hong Kong government couldn't do anything about it, because I want independence of Hong Kong. Now, how could the Hong Kong government do anything about it? So, it would become a commission of inquiry with answers that would probably end up in vain, that nothing can be done to satisfy their demand or their political demand. So I would have thought that it would eventually be in vain.
Was it not a case of shoot for the stars, get the moon? Push as hard as they can for as much as they can and see what they can get, see what shakes out of the tree?
Well, I think it is quite obvious what this group really wants. I mean, if you put them into evidence, they will say that they want independence.
Do you really think so? That many of them?
Yeah, I would have thought. I'm not sure what Albert wants.
Albert, you're closer to a lot of these guys.
I don't think that is a proper attitude to say that a certain individual group wants independence. Then nothing that you can do. First of all, I want to say that 95% of those people participate in the MongKok incident. They don't believe they don't belong to any group. Right? Many of them are just individuals who are not satisfied with the government. Turn out on the street. For a serious political problem, you need to address the issue and also find the source and the reason, for those developments.
Why do you say? On what evidence do you have for saying that 95% of those people don't belong to any group?
Are unaffiliated, yeah.
Well, I spent 2 months in MongKok during the occupation, and also I know quite a lot of those people, even some of those people who forced bricks and also set fire. So there are a lot of people that who are just individuals, and they're not happy, with the government. So that by saying, one individual group's political position represent all those people is totally wrong. Those people don't really understand the actual political reality.
Lawrence Marr, by the same token, how do you know that all those people who took part shared that view that you just expressed?
Well, I thought that they were assembled under the umbrella of the localism.
No.
Yeah, so I mean, it was the organizer, and people were caught in as being the organizer.
So you see, Mr. Marr, you say yes, and Albert Chan says no. So maybe you have a judge, because it's an important question. So you have a judge to come in and say who's right.
Maybe we need an inquiry.
Well, I mean, as the government has said, the matter is going to go to court, and evidence will be led in court. And as to why they conducted a riot would be fully revealed in evidence in court. Now, why don't we wait for the court?
Will it though? It's not really the job of a court, is it, to determine the political motivation?
I don't think the court. I don't think the court will address those issues.
The court will say, "Did you throw the stone? Yes or no?"
Unless the police gather enough evidence to charge people with conspiracy, in which case they will have to determine was it pre-planned.
You're the barrister, Lawrence Marr. Tell us.
I would have thought if you have a legitimate reason, which you think it would reduce your sentence, even you throw the stone, at the mitigation stage, you will say, hey, Your Honor, I've actually do this not for myself, but for the advance of political cause. I'm not going to, please reduce my sentence. These sort of things will come out.
Is that considered a mitigating factor in court?
Well, I think that's the only thing they can say. I mean, what are the mitigating factors?
Well, definitely not. I was in court numerous times. I was positive numerous times. I mean, those political reasons, will not be discussed or fully disclosed, in the court. Even though when we try to make a few political statements, during the court proceeding, the judge will stop us.
Well, you can't make political statements in a court, but as a mitigating factor, you're saying that I'm not doing this for revenge. I'm doing this for the public good. Now that would be a mitigating factor, I would have thought.
I think
at least you can present it as a factor.
It's completely two different proceedings. The court proceeding will not discover those political reasons, for the incident.
Yeah, I don't see Hong Kong judges being too interested in that as a mitigating factor.
True. But if you want to know why they do it, that's the way.
Okay, well, one defence might be that they didn't do it, of course, and that it was a mistaken identity or something like that, which brings us to the second issue, which is that of masks and the idea that there to be a law, as there is in many other places, about wearing a mask in public demonstrations or even in public areas. There are different laws in different places. That's something we're going to tackle in just a couple of minutes' time after the news at 9 o'clock. You can email us now with your thoughts on the question of an inquiry or on the question of masks. Later, we're also going to be talking about problems in the South China Sea. You can email us at backchat@rthk.hk, or you can call us 233-88266 and join the conversation. The weather forecast for today now before the news at 9 o'clock. It's going to be cloudy, cold with a few light rain patches this morning, and then sunny intervals in the afternoon with maximum temperature of about 17 degrees. Milder during the day tomorrow. Temperatures falling again over the weekend. It's going up and down. It's going to be windy again with a few rain patches. 13 degrees now, humidity 92%.
There. You're listening to the news on RTHK.
Welcome back. This is Backchat on a Thursday morning with Andrew Work of the Harbour Times and me, Hugh Chewton. As your host, we're continuing to talk about the MongKok riots and two proposals or two suggestions that have come out of it. One, the idea of an independent inquiry. That was the focus of the discussion in the first part of the programme with Thomas Chung from the Business and Professionals Alliance for Hong Kong, Chairman of the Commission on Youth, Lawrence Ma, who's a barrister, Chairman of the China-Australia Legal Exchange Foundation, and Albert Chan, legislator with People Power, and also the idea of a law which would ban masks in public demonstrations or perhaps in public areas. There are a number of countries around the world who have various laws banning the use of masks or face coverings, although they do have exceptions for Halloween and things like that. We're talking about that. We want to turn now to those proposals, and we're also joined by Sid Ho, who's a legislator with the Labour Party. Later we're going to be talking about problems in the South China Sea. Our email address is backchat@rthk.hk. Our telephone number is 233-88266, and we've got a caller on the line shortly. Let's just hear a few of the emails. Andrew says, trying to define what is a riot is amusing but not very productive. If you read the email I sent last week, you will see that this is called recreational rioting and has its roots in civil disobedience. Ben says, for Albert Chan to say people don't understand why the MongKok riot happened is plain BS. These rioters are criminals or people with criminal intent. Of course, Albert Chan will always blame CY Leung and the PRC government for everything. Stop this BS, says Ben. And Benjamin, I don't know if there's any relation, says, Dear Backchat, please don't waste resources investigating the MongKok riots. The rioters intentionally broke the law and resisted the police, period. Nothing else to talk about. Bring these troublemaking people to justice, end of story. There are, however, many areas requiring public inquirers, and he goes on to list some of them, which we haven't got time for now, Benjamin. Honestly, sorry, but interesting. Elderly care homes, the state of hospitals, the small house policy, subsidised housing, senior civil servants wrongdoing, and the state of local education are included in his list. And Long C says, how did Albert escape from the Muppets? His hatred of CY seems to be colouring his every thought. Before saying what is not a riot, perhaps he should have read the legal definition, not invent his own. It was a riot, says Longing C. Thank you very much indeed for that comment. We've got a caller on the line now. Alan, good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, your thoughts?
Okay, I just caught your programme quite late prior to the 9 o'clock news. But I did hear that there was some discussion about whether the people taking part in the violence in the MongKok riots were of the same affiliation, of the same party. And I heard that Albert said that he asserted that they were not. But then he actually went on to say that he actually knew quite a few of the people who were throwing bricks and setting fire. So I just wondered what circles he was moving in to know these people. Was it different circles or the same circle? And is it anything to do with civic passion or people power or one Yuan Dak? I would like you to answer that question. Thank you.
Albert Chan?
Well, mainly that I have met a lot of people, in the past, few years in numerous political incidents. And I was in MongKok a long time during the umbrella movement. And I met lots of people. Some of those people that I saw involved in the MongKok incident, I met before. I mean, it's not. I mean, there's nothing unusual about that. Lots of people have been involved in political activity, in the past few years, and they participate, in this incident in MongKok, during the Chinese New Year.
So I guess part of the question would be...
Alan? Yeah. Do you want to come back?
Just one last point before I go. Basically, I would like to say that Albert's avoided that question.
I don't want to name names. I mean, the legal proceeding...
Albert, let me finish, please, Albert.
Yes?
I'll let you finish. Can you actually, if you know these people, I'm sure that you'll be helping the police with their inquiries in relation to those people who haven't already been arrested. If you know these people throwing stones and setting fires, because obviously it's an illegal activity that should not go on. Well, are you going to assist police with their inquiries?
Well, if there will be an independent inquiry, I may appear in front of that, group, to present my views. But I don't think, I'm in a position to help the police.
Have they called?
I mean, it's not my duty to help the police.
Have they called you?
I see. A civic-minded person, a member of the Hong Kong society, where you see laws being broken, it is not your duty to assist police.
No, because I don't trust.
Thank you.
Because I don't trust the police. Period. I mean, if I don't trust the organization, why will I assist them? It is quite clear. The police is not the same police force as I know before. The changeover. The police. I mean, there were lots of court decisions indicate that the police, the policemen create story and lie in front of the court. And there were cases that the police raped, the people in the police station. So the police force has changed, dramatically in the past few years. I just don't trust the present police force.
I think we're going off a tangent here, Albert, because obviously you're bringing up cases that are very rare. And obviously we're on about the MongKok riots. We're on about people's behaviour. I suppose your behaviour sometimes in LegCo leaves a lot to be left to be desired, Albert. Doesn't it?
Okay, Alan, we'll take your point. Thanks.
I just want to add that, you have been mistreated by the police, then you may feel differently. Lots of Hong Kong people, especially the young people, have been beaten up and mistreated by the police again and again. I mean, you cannot turn a blind eye on this type of problem.
Okay, Alan. Thanks for your call.
Regain public confidence.
All right, let's go to the issue of the masks now. Thanks, Alan. Sid Ho, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Where do you stand on this suggestion that we pass legislation which would make it illegal for people taking part in a demonstration to wear masks?
Well, back in 2003, when the SARS epidemic broke out, there was a discussion in the Executive Council whether Hong Kong should legislate to ask everybody to wear a mask during those periods. But then the Secretary, Mr. E.K. stood up against it because anybody with a respirational disease or rheumatoid would be seriously affected by the disenforcement of mask wearing. But on the other way around, if we ask everybody not to wear the mask, that would also help to spread the disease as well. And actually, somebody whose identity is very sensitive, like LGBT still in the closet, or a sex worker when they go on to a demonstration against abuse by the police, they also wear masks. And even complainants helped by the DAB legislator, they also wear masks if they are victim of domestic violence. So that this piece of the legislative proposal is not carefully considered before it was suggested.
Do you think it was a serious suggestion, or do you think it was just a little bit of political posturing to kind of rally the base?
I think it is a very careless recommendation, but when it was put up in the chamber of the legislature, it is definitely a very absurd oxymoron.
Okay, but the health question, that's not really relevant, is it? Because the people who were taking part in the riot in MongKok, they weren't wearing masks for health reasons. They were wearing it to hide their identity. And this legislation exists in many countries around the world, many sort of societies that we consider free societies, like Canada, like the United States, Austria, Denmark, France. The list goes on. It's not a health issue really, because this would just pertain to demonstrations, to during public demonstrations, not most of the time.
Well, the proposal of this sort would have to be backed up with a lot more detail, not just foreign experience. And, while we are talking about similar anti-mask law in Canada and other democratic countries, and we have to note that they have great threat of terrorism from certain cultural background, so that they would not want people to put on the costume of those cultural background all over these peoples to hide their identity. Whereas in Hong Kong, our police have the power to stop anybody on the street and ask for his ID card, and that is certain power not given to police in other countries. So that when we have power of this sort, that the police could try to investigate or question anybody under query, then why should we beat these anti-mask laws?
Good point, Lawrence Ma.
Lawrence Ma, what do you think of the idea of a law against masks in demonstrations?
Well, if you I would say that if they have the guts to break the law, they should have the guts to face the consequences, and they shouldn't conceal their identities. I mean, if they are committing a petty crime for personal gain, I understand why would they want to wear a mask to hide their identity. But if they're advancing a political cause, that they want Hong Kong people to agree with that cause, I would have thought that, like other civic movement, like in India by Mahatma Gandhi, he never wear a mask during civil disobedience.
Yeah, but Sid Ho just made a couple of good points about what if you're LGBT and you don't want to come out of the closet, or you don't want your boss to know because you're afraid you might get fired, but you still want to, have your presence felt and say your piece, as it were. Yeah,
well, the problem is those people are not violent. Many of them. I mean, if you talk about sex workers coming out to demonstrate, I haven't seen sex workers committing a riot on the street.
Right. Well, the point is this legislation would supposedly cover people in peaceful protests as well.
Some cover all protests, some cover riots and unlawful assemblies. Some cover any appearance on the street at all, so there are different ways of doing ways of approaching it.
If you ask me on top of my head, I would say, well, the law should not cover, should have a blanket coverage of all people walking on the street. Only those people involved in unlawful assembly should not wear masks.
Albert Chan, what do you think about the idea?
Well, I don't think that will help to solve the problem. You have to understand the reason, for those people's activity. So if you have a new legislation to bar people to wear masks, then you will force those people to go underground. Then they may create, bombs or other more destructive and the more violent incident. So that when you look, in history.
It's a bit of a dangerous argument, isn't it? You have to go soft on them because they might do something worse.
Yeah, definitely. Then they will go underground to become more secretive organization. To create, probably the urban, guerrilla warfare. There will be all kind of action can be created with their intelligence and their ability. So if you try to suppress some of their activity, then they will create more different type of activity to confront the government.
But it's illegal. It's illegal, violent activity. You can encourage the good activity. You can say you can stand for election. You can join the political process. You can come on programs like this, and you can argue. You can peacefully demonstrate. There are all kinds of ways you can join public life in Hong Kong. You don't have to throw stones at people, and you stop one activity and you encourage another. What's wrong with that?
But if those people believe that election can help to solve their problem or to achieve their goal, then they won't throw stone.
It's encouraging violence.
Not encouraging. I'm telling you the reason and also the source of the problem by creating new law to bar people to wear masks. It won't help to solve the problem, and also you were going to create more problem for yourself. I'm just giving you the facts. And I'm not encouraging anything.
Thomas
I've been telling the government in the past.
Those people try to hide their identity and committing, criminal offenses.
Well, quite clear about that. It's quite clear that they want to hide their identity. But if you're going to stop, them to wear masks, then they won't throw stone. Then they will maybe set up bombs and to hide in some places and blow up places.
In your logic, if they don't wear masks, I don't think they would have throw stone. Because they won't have throw stone. If they have their identity be identified.
Yeah, then they won't throw stone. But in the next week or two, then they may create a bomb and to hide a bomb in somewhere else and blow up places.
So you are encouraging them, you should wear masks and then you can throw stone. That's what you're saying.
I'm not encouraging them. I'm telling you the fact. As I told the government in the past few years, if they keep on administrating Hong Kong in that way, there will be violence, sooner or later.
You're encouraging to break the law. You're allowing them to wear masks, and then they can, commit offenses, criminal offenses, be rioters, and not being prosecuted because their identity, no one can trace their identity. And that's what you're saying.
No. If you are twisting my intention, that is your liberty. But I'm telling you the fact and the reality. If you refuse to accept the reality, I'm telling you there will be more violent confrontation and there will be more serious violence in the future.
No. We have to look into that. But we are talking about wearing masks, in demonstration.
No, I'm telling you.
It's a different issue.
To stop people wearing masks doesn't help to resolve the political problem.
Yes, but we still have to, stop them from wearing masks, in demonstration, because we're encouraging those people to commit more violence.
Well, you're not listening. You don't understand my description. I'm telling you, if you stop people wearing masks, you are going to force people to go underground and form more secretive society, and they're going to
That's
create
your assumption,
more,
yes.
I'm telling you, that is my understanding of the situation.
Because right now our protesters are running for LegCo. They're public figures. Mm-hmm. Some of them.
One of them.
Well, only one
Some
person.
Of them.
Yeah.
Those people, many of those people following Stone, don't belong to their organization.
Here's a question maybe Lawrence Ma or maybe Sid Ho can answer. In other places, there are already laws that forbid concealing your identity when you're in the process of committing a crime. So, Canada's one of these places that introduced a law about concealing your identity while at a protest, but they already had in place a law that made it illegal to disguise with intent. Does such a law exist in Hong Kong right now?
No, there's no such law. That's why we are proposing that this law to be tabled as a bill.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much indeed to all our panel. Just some more comments. First of all, an email from Drake, which is a long article, which is an analysis of the cause of and the progress of the riots. Drake says, I don't expect this to be read out on the program, just want to share some different perspectives. Can I suggest you put that on our Facebook page? Any articles like that, or links, of course, are welcome, so that listeners can peruse those at their leisure. Thanks, Drake. Sam says, so on the day of the protest, should the pollution levels be high, I'm not allowed to protect my health. I'm a senior citizen. If my health is so compromised, may I sue the Hong Kong Kong authorities. Hong Kong measures are unfortunately half-assed as usual, says Sam. Flora says, unlike the guests, I don't think the government is responsible for the occurrence of the MongKok riot. It's like you can't blame the nature for global warming, as it's the fact that burning fossil fuel must give carbon dioxide. Similarly, the government has tried its best to balance everyone's views, but some people must still be unhappy with the government's arrangements. An individual inquiry should not be set up to blame the government, which is the ultimate goal of the separatists. Doing so will further encourage the violence, political culture in Hong Kong, that people will believe violence can make all their wishes come true. Instead, an individual inquiry should be conducted to prevent people acting violently again, pinpointing the responsibility at the rioters. And Jeffrey says, I don't know if everyone has forgotten the plot here, but the riot was not organised protest, so a mask rule would make no relevance to it. Thanks for that point. There's some more comments on our Facebook page as well. TC, who says, while I welcome an inquiry, I see very little value in the time and money-consuming exercise. The reason is I don't see the government acting on anything that may come out of the inquiry. And multiple posts from Henry. As previously, you can go to the Facebook page yourself and read them. He does say, for example, on the issue of having an inquiry, I believe, pragmatically speaking, nobody has the status to command the respect of stakeholders. Plus, nobody would want to take the position to be a panel chairman or member. They would face strong criticism, condemnation, castigation from the opposition. Henry and all our guests, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning from the Business and Professionals Alliance. Thomas Chung, Lawrence Ma is a barrister, chairman of the China-Australia Legal Exchange Foundation, Albert Chan, legislator with People Power, and from the Labour Party, legislator Sid Ho. Thank you all very much indeed. 23 minutes past 9. Finally today, we wanted to turn to the issue of the South China Sea and claims that Beijing has deployed anti-aircraft missiles in the South China Sea in Woody Island. In fact, that's an island in the disputed Paracel chain, which is claimed by China, also by Vietnam, and by Taiwan as well. For comment, Jean-Pierre Cabestan joins us now. He's Professor of Political Science, Head of the Department of Government and International Studies at the Baptist University. Professor Cabestan, good morning to you, and Kung Hei Fat Choi.
Good morning.
Okay. Where to start? Do you think this is a serious escalation? Is this a kind of qualitative change of policy for China? I mean, because there have been, peaceful developments and peaceful installations on Woody Island in the past and over the past 40 years, in fact. Is there something different about what they're doing now?
I think it's another step in the militarization of the South China Sea islands by China. Actually, as far as the Paracel are concerned, the Chinese have stationed troops in other islands of the Paracel before that. Of course, it's the first step in putting some missile launchers on one of the Paracel islands, Woody Island indicated, and now the Chinese authorities argue that this move has been made just for self-defense and self-preservation of China's sovereignty. But I think there is a very thin line between what China's been doing and what has been called militarization by everyone in the region. So clearly, China is demonstrating a kind of reactive assertiveness vis-à-vis other claimants and the United States in the South China Sea in deploying these missiles. And after it built, as you know, airstrips and other facilities in the southern part of the South China Sea, in the Spratly archipelago, where there hasn't been yet any military deployment, but the next step will be, of course, to deploy or at least land some planes on the Spratly and some of the facilities now, which can host such military equipment and weapons.
Okay, who is most likely a threat from these? I know the Australians have been doing their regular flybys and are apparently facing more and more challenges from China in the area. Are these surface-to-air missiles? Could those be pointed at Australian fighter jets?
Actually, it can be pointed at any incoming air force or on a naval ship. Now, I think China's objective is to make more than anything else, U.S. ships and aircraft cruising or flying in the South China Sea less secure than before. As you know, the U.S. has launched a number of freedom of navigation operations in the South China Sea just to demonstrate that China claims were exaggerated or illegal. And but at the same time, in deploying such weapon systems, China is making such operations less secure, and will sort of, in the longer run, will force the U.S. to think twice before launching such operations. But that's where we are now. So there's increasing tension now in the South China Sea, but there is not much that other claimants can do about it. So it's kind of fait accompli policy of a big power vis-à-vis other countries which are smaller countries and small powers. So the only way for Vietnam or the Philippines to sort of try to balance China's growing presence and assertiveness in the South China Sea is to be better equipped with coast guards and naval ships. But again, I think the asymmetry is there to stay and to become more obvious in the coming years.
This was obviously leaked by America, by the American military. What do they get out of it? Why do they want to do this?
You mean the Chinese?
No, I mean why does America want to be involved in this way?
Well, I think for a number of reasons, but the main reason is to guarantee the freedom of navigation in the South China Sea, and also to, I would say, support and other claimants' maritime rights, not the sovereign rights, because I think the U.S. doesn't want to get involved into the territorial dispute in the South China Sea. But there are a number of maritime rights which other claimants would like to protect and which have been jeopardized by China's growing presence in the South China Sea as far as fishing is concerned. But
so you're just interested there. You're drawing a hard line between the territorial disputes and the maritime disputes. So that when the American warships sail, for example, they don't sail within 12 miles of these disputed areas, so they don't touch on territorial issues. Is that right?
Well, yes, unless it's a land feature which is submerged at high tide. In that case, there is no claim and whatsoever as far as international law and close the United Nations Convention of the Law of the Sea are concerned.
Yeah, but the Chinese don't seem to care much about that. I mean, they, even if things are submerged, they're like, "Oh, that's ours. It's an island. We don't,
Yep. But at the same time, I think it's important to make the point that these artificial islands are don't generate any rights in terms of territorial waters and adjacent waters as the Chinese claim. So I think the U.S. will continue to demonstrate that, and at the same time, I think in deploying weapons in the Woody Island now, and maybe tomorrow in some of the Spratly land features, China will sort of increase the risk for the U.S. Of cruising its ships and flying its plane in the region. So I think we are in the momentum here, which is part of this militarization of the South China Sea, and I think we very much in a vicious circle. I don't see how to get out of it in the coming years.
Okay, well, Jean-Pierre Cabestan, thank you very much indeed for that note. He's Professor in Political Science at the Baptist University, Head of the Department of Government and International Studies there. Andrew, thank you very much indeed.
Always a pleasure.
For joining us today. We'll be back at 8:30 tomorrow with another regular-style programme. A couple of questions just from Jalal I'll just air and maybe briefly answer about that yesterday's candidates forum for LegCo. Jalal asked why was it not possible to provide simultaneous translation for the non-English speaking candidates so that they could participate, and also is it possible to have dedicated time for Q&A from listeners with particular candidates so that we can have direct access and they can have equal time. I'm afraid that format is not possible with the election forums. Of course, at other times, a back chat, you're very welcome to call up anytime and question the legislators, and I did ask for questions in advance basically from listeners to put to the candidates. For the simultaneous translation, we just felt that really wouldn't work, and it would be better to have an English forum, and people were very welcome to join if they felt confident in English, and if not, we would explain that as they wished, which is how it went in the end. Okay.